right. Well, today in Daniel is the day you've been waiting for. Today is the day you've been waiting for, where we get to end times prophecies. Woohoo! We're finally going to discover who the Antichrist is. Yeah, laugh that one up. No, you're not. But we are at an interesting kind of juncture in the book of Daniel, because up to this point we've had pretty much narratives about the life of Daniel and the various kings, Darius and stuff like that. So we've had this narrative. Remember, and you had the fiery furnace with his friends and all that kind of stuff, real historical events. Today takes kind of a shift, and it's a fascinating shift. So remember, I said last time when we started into Daniel, we're in around 539 BC, where the Medo-Persian Empire takes over the Babylonian Empire. They come in and just basically inhabit all the palaces and everything the Babylonians have. And now you change the nameplates and it's now Medo-Persian. It's not Babylonian anymore. And so that's kind of where we are in the timeline of Daniel. But we're not doing that anymore. Today, we're actually going to receive from heaven 4 visions. From here to the end of the book. From here to the end of the book, 4 visions. And I use this silly TV set because it's got rabbit ears on it. It's an antenna, means it picks up signals from the air. Okay, that's my visions. These visions are coming from heaven. But interestingly enough, these visions are not like the visions we've seen so far. We've seen some visions in the story of Daniel. Like that giant statue, that has the different metals that make up the statue. We've seen these before, but these visions to come as we finish out Daniel are different, because these visions are not visions that the king sees. Remember, before, Nebuchadnezzar had these dreams. They disturbed him. His wise guys could not explain them, and then Daniel gives the explanation to the king, right? And that's what's going on. So these are visions that came to the king, not this one. These visions are not visions to the king. These are visions, actually, to Daniel himself. These are visions that he personally received, which, interestingly enough, in the narrative, the history of Daniel that we know about, he's been keeping in his hip pocket and hasn't said anything about them. What? Yeah. And they're actually given to him so that he can deliver them into the future. And by the way, we are here 2,500 years later. 2,500 years later, and we are in the future. So these are meant for us. Fascinating. So these 4 visions, let me just give you an overview of the 4 visions that we're going to look at before we finish Daniel. Okay, so these are the 4, and you can see why he's tucked these in his hip pocket. You'll notice why in a second. Here's the first verse of all these visions. The first one says, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream and visions. That starts chapter 7, which is where we'll be today. Second vision, in the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, Daniel. That's the start of chapter 8. The 3rd vision, before we end, in the 1st year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus or Ahashverosh. I practiced that. Yeah, never mind. Okay, so we see that coming up there. That's the 3rd vision we're going to look at. And then number 4, he says, in the 3rd year of Cyrus, the king of Persia. Cyrus is the one, when you look at the releasing of the Jews to go back to rebuild the temple that we saw in Nehemiah and Ezra, that's Cyrus. 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia. A word was revealed to Daniel. So we're going to look at four visions from here until the end of Daniel, and they're all going to be about futures. But do you see the timeline of when they were revealed to Daniel? You see why I say he kept them in his hip pocket? Because we saw that one really incredible scene in the narrative with King Belshazzar when there was the disembodied hand that was writing on the wall. That was him. So this vision came while that was going on. Not only the first one, but the first one and the second one during that time. So why didn't Daniel say anything while we were studying that narrative? Because he was waiting till now. So just hold your horses. But then it goes on historically. And then Darius, we've seen a lot of narrative already in Daniel with Darius, the king. Okay. And then coming up is Cyrus, the king. So these are 4 visions he's had. And what he's going to do is he finishes out the book. He's going to roll them out one at a time, and he's going to blow our minds. And you'll see that they don't have direct application to the kings at that time. They're applied to something far in the future, and God will actually tell them this. So we said before, it's really, really hard to understand end times topics of study, which usually come out of Revelation, rightly so, come out of Revelation. It's hard to understand unless you also couple that with a pre-understanding of the book of Daniel. Well, what we pre-understand in Daniel that help us in Revelation are these 4 visions. Ooh. I have to calm myself down with some coffee. Okay, so today we're not going to do all of those. That's a lot of them. But what we are going to do is this one. We're going to do this one in its entirety. I'm not going to leave cliffhangers for you. We're not going to get to the edge and say, well, you're going to have to wait till next week. No, we're going to do the whole thing. So let's see what goes on. Crazy visions. 4 visions. Here we go. Scene 1, I split this up into a handful of scenes, are the beasts. The beasts. Now, if you've read Revelation, that rings a bell, right? The beasts. Well, let's see the beasts. In the first year of Belshazzar, the king of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream and visions of his head as he lay in his bed. And then he wrote down the dream and told the sum of the matter. So he wrote it down and stuck it in his hip pocket. And now he's pulling it out and he's going to read it for us. Okay. So Daniel declared, this is what he wrote down. I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and 4 great beasts came up out of the sea, different from one another. So again, if you're a reader of Revelation, this is looking kind of similar. It's extraordinarily similar. The sea, probably Mediterranean. It's not specific, it's not important, but the sea is the access the whole world has to being with one another. I mean, it's where everything comes from. It's also a scary place. The Jews were not really known to be maritime people, so the oceans scared them. It's like being on a boat and not knowing how to swim. So the sea was a very mysterious source of danger in that sense. So that's how Daniel is using it. That's how this dream is coming across. And coming up out of this dangerous, mysterious place worldwide are some beasts, 4 great beasts. The 4 winds of heaven means actually that this is something that's not just a localized event either in Babylonia or in Israel. It's kind of like a worldwide event. The 4 winds are always connected to the 4 compass points. So it's like a big view. So out of this big view worldwide, out of this dangerous and murky place, this ocean, 4 beasts come out. And they're all different. So it keeps going. The first beast was like a lion, and it had eagle's wings. And then as I looked, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and the mind of a man was given to it. Okay, so if you're reading these going, oh, what? That's a good reaction. That's a good reaction, because it's confusing Daniel as well. He will explain this to us in a second. So if you're feeling a little anxious because you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. It'll be okay. But what you have to understand is the characteristic of this beast. We're talking about a lion, fierce, indefensible from our part. When a lion attacks you, you're just gone. They overpower you, right? But not only that, but this is a lion that has extraordinary access to everything because it's got wings. Can you imagine a lion which devours, who flies over your area, who can spot prey from the air and then suddenly comes from the sun and comes down and grabs you? So this is an enormously powerful, dangerous, kind of ubiquitous danger that hovers over our heads that everyone is vulnerable to. It's a terrifying thing. But what's strange about it is that beast suddenly is transformed into a man. So this beast is in the end is characterized like a man. Its ability to come out of the sky and do something, it sort of goes away. It's powerful, but he's a man. He's a man. Fascinating. Okay, well, then he goes on. He's just going to tell us, and behold, another beast. This is number 2, another beast, a second one, like a bear, okay? It was raised up on one side. It had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth, and it was told, arise, devour much flesh. Again, a terrifying beast, a terrifying beast. This one doesn't have wings, but it is a gigantic bear and raised up on its side and clearly has been eating a lot of things because it's got ribs in its mouth, which is one of my favorite things to do in the summer, by the way. Ribs in my mouth. Yeah, not bears. Yeah, ribs in my mouth. But it's been given the command, devour much flesh. So again, a tremendous and undiscriminating, I can't think of the word for the violence that it does in terms of consuming flesh. Dangerous. Okay, that's creepy. More creepy. Number 3. After this I looked, and behold, another like a leopard with 4 wings of a bird on its back, and the beast had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. What? Yeah, okay. So what do you know about leopards? What's their chief characteristic? Spots. Wasn't what I was looking for. That's true. It's true. As predators, what are they known for? Stealth and speed. Stealth and speed. Hang out in the dark where you don't see them, and then boom, like a lightning flash, they can come out and take you. Speed. Now you have speed that's quadrupled because this speedy predatory animal is not only fast, it's got 4 wings like a bird. So it's fast and really fast. Fast, and really fast. That'll be an important characteristic when we interpret what this means in a second. But it's a predator, and it has dominion. It also has 4 heads. And that'll become clear in a second. So just keep that for a while. Okay, let's go to number 4. Number 4 and last. After this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, terrifying and dreadful, like those others weren't, terrifying and dreadful and exceedingly strong. It had great iron teeth. It devoured and broke in pieces and stamped what was left with its feet. This one does not look like a lion. It does not look like a bear. It does not look like a leopard. It looks like nothing we can understand. It's not even equivalent to any kind of animal that we look at and say, I'm terrified of this thing. It is all by itself some kind of beast of unknown equivalence in the animal kingdom that is terrifying. It's terrifying. And Daniel says, this terrifying and dreadful and exceedingly strong, and it has a very capable amount of teeth to be able to take you out, iron teeth. So very, very capable when it comes to devouring. And even what's left after it devours, it stomps what's left with its feet, and then devours something else. Oh, man. Well, it was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Okay, it's going to get murkier. We're still in the 4th beast. Has 10 horns. Again, if you're a Revelation buff, this is sounding correct. What is a horn? It's not a trumpet. It's not those loud trumpets boo, that they do at football games. Not a horn like that. It's a horn like coming out of an animal. A horn coming out of an animal. So in that mindset, a horn coming out of an animal is extremely dangerous because you have the entire weight and tonnage of a large animal focused on a tiny dot toward you. Think of a rhinoceros that has a horn in front. The rhinoceros itself has tonnage to it. So if it just runs into you, it's going to kill you. But imagine that tonnage focused behind a tiny dot. It's a power that's focused. So when you see a horn in Scripture, that's what they're thinking about. I'll tell you a story. You've probably heard it again. Next door to us at the church at Spokane, we had a farmer that was there. And one time I was out with him in his field as I came into work and just visiting with him, standing in the field. And he had a small calf. He had a calf that he was raising. He did raise cattle, but for some reason he had this calf, and it was sort of like a puppy to him. So as he's out in the field, I'm with him out in the field fixing a piece of machinery, this calf is loose and it comes up to kind of be puppy-like with his owner and me. And so as he comes up behind the two of us, of course, he wants to nuzzle a little bit. So while me and Oli are talking, he comes up and he nuzzles the side of your leg. Do you know what 1,000 pounds feels like behind a tiny horn on this animal as it comes and nuzzles your leg? It's bruises. It was really painful. And so he's not charging me. He's just coming up to nuzzle. And I go, oh, what was that? And Oli says, that's okay. He just likes us. He likes us. Well, in that kind of liking as a puppy, he's causing extreme damage. Now think about him charging with that. So that's what a horn is biblically. It's a focused power that cannot be resisted. Tonnage behind a pencil point, right? So that's what we're talking about. Now, this last beast not only has one of them, it's got 10 of them. It's got 10 of these focus points, right? What a wreck. And so I considered the horns, he says. And Daniel goes on, behold, there came up among them, the 10 horns, another horn, a little one, before which 3 of the first horns were plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. So you got to get this image in your head, because this is unlike anything we know about. So you got the 10 horns, and then a smaller horn comes up, more like this horn this calf had. It was very small. It's like the size of a thumb. Comes up, and somehow it takes care of 3 of the horns, 3 of the focused power things. But in the process, its characteristic isn't so much power. It's kind of a human face. It's kind of eyes of a man, mouth speaking great things. So it's what it's speaking, the great things it's speaking, that seem to have sway in this 10-horn thing. Its power is in its words. Whoa. And that's the vision. Okay, we'll get a little interpretation in a second. But before we get there, another scene comes to Daniel in the midst of this. And this scene unfolds before him. As I looked, thrones were placed, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was white as snow, the hair of his head like pure wool. So another scene is assembling here. Instead of these four beasts that come out of this mysterious, dangerous place in the world, he sees like a throne room. And in fact, the thrones are being set up. Like here's a vacant room, and now we're going to set the thrones up, and we're setting up basically a king's throne room where he does judgment. Is what he says exactly what he's describing here. And who is the king? The Ancient of Days. Who's the Ancient of Days? God himself. We just sang about it. The one who's older than everything. The one who's older than everything. Who made everything. He takes his seat. His clothing was white, which is a sign of purity and righteousness and even judgment. And his hair on his head like pure wool, kind of like Steve's. Thanks a lot. And some of us I don't mention. So that's also a sign of great wisdom and authority. That's not going to work. Oh, ha, she says, sitting next to him. Yeah, okay. So we have God being seated in a throne room. Okay? So when you have a king being seated in a throne room, judgment's going to happen, or some kind of deal is going to happen from the most powerful person anywhere. So something big's happening. So you got these four beasts showing up, and suddenly you got this throne room going on. Well, let's look more at the throne room. So his throne, wow, was fiery flames. Its wheels were burning fire. A stream of fire issued and came from before him. So yes, we're talking about judgment. Judgment and that kind of condemnation and the penalty is always pictured by fire. Our God is a consuming fire when you talk about judgment. You know, as an aside, we've talked about this a lot, and we'll do it a little bit right here. You have to always balance in your mind the fact that God's principal characteristic is love. God is love, John says in many places. But his characteristic that goes with that and has to accompany that is justice. And it's easy to understand, for instance, I'll go parents. Parents, if you see an injustice that's brought upon your children, right? You intercede and say, that's not fair. I need to do something about that. You engage on it. You protect your child and you deal with the injustice. There's something about love for the child that invokes a sense of justice, because love in its definition biblically is to prefer the good and the blessing for someone as opposed to the bad for the person. So how are you supposed to make sure that the ones you love are visited with good rather than evil? You have to be able to discern between good and evil. And that's justice. So justice and love go hand in hand. They always have. So here we have God who's seated on his throne, and something is about to go down. How do we know? White, white, white. Flames. Flames are shooting out. Flames are shooting out. Of all of everything. Of the throne, the wheels. You know there's wheels on thrones? Yeah, we won't talk about that. But anyway, the whole thing. We're talking judgment is coming. This looks pretty bad. And 1,000 served him. This is the Ancient of Days. And 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. And the court sat in judgment, and the books were opened. You ever gone into court, had the book thrown at you? This is much worse. Much, much worse. Biblically, the book isn't as much about the list of things you've done right and wrong. That's our classic understanding of judgment. And there is a book that has that written down. But there's another book that's talked about much more frequently in the Bible. And it's a book that has names in it. And we've talked about this before. It has names in it. And if your name is written there, woohoo, you're good. If your name's not written there, ooh, flames. So it's judgment. Names in a book. So the throne room is set up. There's fire everywhere. This is not going to be good for the ones who don't have their names in this book. And then judgment happens, and their books are opened, and we're going to see who survives judgment. That's the scene. Well, who are we talking about? Who's being judged? Maybe the four beasts? I looked then because of the sound of the great words that the horn was speaking. Remember that horn that came up? 3 came out and is there. And it's saying big words, big bad words, actually. So Daniel's saying, I'm listening to things that this little horn is saying. And I'm going, oh, We're in the judgment room. He ought to fear for himself because he's saying some nasty stuff. We'll see in a second. He'll be more specific. But Daniel's thinking about, with this judgment so imminent and this horn saying the things this horn is saying, oh, buddy, you don't want to be here. You don't want to be here. This is bad. And as I looked, the beast was killed and its body destroyed and given over to be burned with fire. This horn that was speaking. That's so powerful. That's more powerful than the 10 horns. God just goes, okay. So the terror that Daniel's having when he sees these beasts, and especially this fourth one's unlike all the other ones, terrifies him. And this has got to be a great moment of rest for him, because he's going, well, God sees how bad this is. And God just goes, and he's gone. Just like that. Wave of his hand. The Ancient of Days. Now, as for the rest of the beasts, well, their dominion was taken away, but their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. So it wasn't instant destruction, but yeah, they're allowed. You can sense the fact that the Ancient of Days is allowing them to be around just a little bit longer for his purposes. He hasn't vaporized them yet, but you can feel it's coming. Whew. Okay, this is the third scene. And now again, another scene flash happened. We started with the 4 beasts coming out of the magnificent sea that has all the mystery and danger to it. We have this throne room set up where the Ancient of Days is. And now we're still kind of in the throne room, but an amazing thing happens. We're not just destroying things with fire. Something amazing happens. Oh, go back. I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came one like a son of man. And he came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. Now, if you don't read forward here, you might think he's going to be judged just like that little loudmouth horn was. Loudmouth horn. I like that, loudmouth horn. But no, he's being presented before the Ancient of Days. Something's different here. I don't sense judgment coming. Why? Well, because, he came with the clouds of heaven. That's where God figuratively is. But what's fascinating is he's a son of man. He's a human being, is what that phrase means. He's a human being. Son of, when you use it in this context, and actually in every context biblically, son of means something that comes from something that's like it. It's, like goats give birth to goats, and cattle give birth to cattle, and people give birth to people. It's, of like kind. That's the son of. If you're a son of an elite, very rich person, you end up living in a rich elite family. You're a son of that elite. So you take on all the characteristics. Like kind of begets like. That's the idea of son of. So son of man just means this is a human being. This is a man. So what chances are there that a man can be presented before the Ancient of Days, who takes something like the loudmouth horn, who's saying incredibly horrible things, and God snaps his finger and he's gone, how long is this man going to survive in the presence of the Ancient of Days, who's all white, who's got flames issuing from everywhere? I mean, it's a dangerous place to be. If you have sin, you're toast. But a human being is being brought before the Ancient of Days. By the way, you want to keep this in your hip pocket. This mention of the Son of Man right here is pivotal to understanding the entire Bible when that phrase is used. Jesus' own reference to himself, by a large number, by a large ratio, is as the Son of Man. Well, what's so big about this? Let's find out. He's presented before the Ancient of Days. And to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. So we had these beasts, which seemed like some kind of kingdoms or something of influence that devoured mankind. But this man is brought before the Ancient of Days, and by deliberate design, this man is given a kingdom that will never end. A man. Dominion, which means there's no place that's excluded from his power. Glory, everyone worships who he is. A kingdom that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. So not just like the nation of Israel or the nation of somebody, not an ethnic group. Everybody from the whole world is going to have the opportunity to be part of this, to serve him. Well, His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. Just a little homework for you. I just thought of this. Read Luke chapter 1, somewhere around verse 30-ish, and see what the angel says to Mary about who this one is going to be born. Just a little bit of homework you'll have fun with, because you'll connect with this perfectly. A kingdom that shall not be destroyed. It's interesting, back in chapter 2 of Daniel, he had that vision of that statue that had the four different metals, and they signified sequential kingdoms of the earth. They would come and they would go, and they would come and they would go. I mean, we just saw at the beginning of Daniel how the Babylonian Empire, gigantic and huge, and it's made a huge impact on the earth. Whoop, it's gone when the Medo-Persians come in. Kingdoms come and go, kingdoms come and go. But what he's saying right here is that in the end of all these things, a kingdom is coming that is given to a man, to a human being, and this kingdom will be the final kingdom. It will never be destroyed in the history of the world. Wow. Well, we those are the scenes, and so now Daniel's looking for an answer about what this all means. So as for me, Daniel, my spirit within me was anxious. Oh, you think? And the visions of my head alarmed me, and I approached one of those who stood there. So this is actually the throne room scene still. He approaches someone in the throne room scene. I approached someone in this throne room scene, one of those who stood there, and asked him the truth concerning all this. So he told me and made known to me the interpretation of the things. Okay, finally, we're going to get some answers to all this stuff. So here's the interpretation. Well, he says, these four great beasts are four kings who shall arise out of the earth. Well, now, wait a second. Is this the same four kings we talked about in chapter 2 with the statue of the different metals? Very likely. So there's just four kingdoms. And I read this and go, well, I already knew that. No, you didn't, Jim. We're going to connect these together. Four kingdoms, successive kingdoms that will arise out of the earth. And verse 18, the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, forever, and ever. Wait. Okay, that's wrong. I mean, wasn't this Son of Man who came from the clouds of heaven? Isn't this his kingdom? What? Shouldn't that be a kingdom be given to him? I mean, he's the Son of Man who comes out of the clouds of heaven. Shouldn't this say, but the Son of Man who came from the clouds of heaven, he'll possess the kingdom forever and ever. But look who possesses it. Look who possesses it. This is such great news for us. The saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, forever, and ever. Which means the Son of Man who comes from the clouds on high is going to come and establish a kingdom that will last forever. And it's for you and I. Wow. I'm letting that soak because I'm soaking in that for a second. That's an astonishing thing. No one would ever say of Nebuchadnezzar, for instance. Nebuchadnezzar, what a great man. He came to establish his kingdom and to invite the entire world to be there and to enjoy his wonderfulness. No, that kingdom was for Nebuchadnezzar. Kings have kingdoms for themselves. This king establishes a kingdom for the ones who love the Ancient of Days. It's an astonishing turnabout in terms of how kingdoms operate. This is a kingdom unlike any other you've heard about. God has established it through this man on purpose so that what he has done has made this kingdom possible for every nation and language and tribe on earth to take part in it. And it's for them. It's for them. Wow. Tell us more. Nope, he's not going to tell us anymore. Wait, we need more interpretation. There's got to be more than that. What about the bear? What about the leopard? Wait, that's not enough. Well, he pushes on. We got to push on. There we go. So Daniel does do this. He says, wait a second. I need to know more about the fourth beast. Then I desired to know the truth about the fourth beast, which was different from all the rest, exceedingly terrifying. So, okay, I like your explanation, dude who's standing in the throne room when we don't know who you are, but can we talk a little about the fourth beast, which is so immensely terrifying? A little more about that, can we? So he asks about that. And he gives us a little more detail that he didn't before. Its teeth of iron, claws of bronze, and which devoured and broke in pieces and stamped what was left with its feet. And not only that, it had 10 horns that were on its head, and the other horn that came up, and before which 3 of them fell, and the horn that had eyes and a mouth, and that spoke great things, and that seemed greater than its companions. And as I looked, the horn made war with the saints. Now this is news now. Made war with the saints, prevailed over them, and the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given for the saints of the Most High, and the time came when the saints possessed the kingdom. Woohoo! Oh, sorry. So he's just recounting what he saw. But before we skip past that, let's make some sobering observations here. First off, I'll say those saints are us, those who love Jesus, who love the Ancient of Days, God himself. I mean, that's what we're talking about. But look, this horn, the loudmouth horn, made war with the saints and prevailed over them. He won. Now, I mention this because there's so much talk when we talk about eschatology, end time stuff, about whether we are going to have to endure the tribulation that's coming, the very, very hard time. I can't give you a deliberate yes or no answer on that. I can give you a lot of opinions. But this phrase right here tends to push me into the camp that we will be in a place where we will be prevailed upon. I mean, it's what it says. This loudmouth horn makes war with these people, with the saints, and is allowed to prevail over them until the Ancient of Days steps in, judgment's given, and then the war on the saints actually turns around the very end. So those very saints indeed possess the kingdom. So how can this nasty loudmouth horn prevail over the saints, and yet still in the end, although the war looks like it's going to the bad horn and he's prevailing, in the end, it's the saints who possess the kingdom. How can such bad news turn into such good news? See, that's the amazing thing about this story. Hold that for a second. We need more about the fourth beast. So we're still in the fourth beast. You ready for a little more bad news from the fourth beast? Well, verse 23. And so he said, as for the fourth beast, well, there shall be a fourth kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all the kingdoms, and it shall devour the whole earth and trample it down and break it to pieces. So we are talking about a superpower we have yet to see. There's no superpower I can think of in the history of mankind that's this big. But not only is it big and has influence, it devours the earth. The kingdom, this kingdom that's established, looks at human beings and civilizations and countries and sees them as food to be devoured, to be taken advantage of, not to be nurtured, not to be taken care of. They're just seen as fodder for this kingdom. Devour the whole earth, trample it down, break it to pieces. And then he goes on. As for the 10 horns, out of the kingdom 10 kings shall arise, and another shall arise after them, and he shall be different from the former ones, and shall put down 3 kings. So this is an interesting kingdom in so many ways. There isn't just one king, like Nebuchadnezzar was a king in charge of Babylon, Cyrus in charge of Medo-Persians. Now we have 10 kings. So we're talking about a kingdom that's got like a board of kings, a bunch of kings that together establish this one kingdom, but with a dominant king. And he shall speak words. Again, see, this loudmouth horn shall speak words against the Most High. Against the Most High. And shall wear out the saints of the Most High. Another piece of sobering news. Whatever this dominant loudmouth horn is going to do on a worldwide basis is not only going to prevail over the saints, but he is going to wear them out. And the imagery on this, I looked up the Hebrew just to make sure I wasn't wrong. The imagery on this is that he'll be around long enough that the saints will just sigh and say, when is this guy going to go away? And it just wear them down. It won't be like he comes to power one day And the next day, the Ancient of Days comes up and says, no, you can't do that. And so within like a week's time, everything is fixed. No, we're talking about kind of a long-term stay, whatever that means in terms of time, that the saints will just be worn down. He shall think to change the times and the law, and they shall be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. Again, very sobering news. The saints who are around at the time that this guy, the loudmouth powerhouse guy who's powerful enough to take down 3 kings in this conglomerate kingdom, this guy who is so against the Most High, the one who prevails, the one who wears down, they'll be given into his hand. He'll actually think to change the times and the law. You know what that made me think of? Did you know during the French Revolution, they decided to cast off all history about what had happened from a Catholic perspective in France? They said, we don't want any religion anymore in France. They decided to get away from the 7-day week, and they established a 10-day week. Did you know that? French Revolution? Because we're not going to abide by any traditions we had, and especially the ones that came out of the Bible that says God made everything in 6 days and then rested on the 7th. We're going to get rid of that 7-day stuff. That's foolishness. That's too biblical. We're going to 10 days. Hello? What? Well, we say that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, you start thinking crazy things. Let's do 10-day weeks. Okay, that sounds good to me. And also changing the law. So this ultimate power has the ability to just completely revoke the law, change what used to be an orderly ruling dictate that even the kings were under. They'll say, rip that up, start over. I want the law to be what I want it to be, and that's what's happening. And that's exactly what happened in the French Revolution too. If you're a study of history, I would really invite you to contrast the French Revolution from the American Revolution, because the one thing that made the two of those extraordinarily different in outcome, was the fact that the American Revolution was peopled by people who believed in God largely. They didn't impose their religious beliefs on all the masses, but they said there is a God and we are accountable to this God. And men are tragically flawed, and when you put them in power, they'll do nasty things. So we need to build a country that puts barriers in place of the men who will be ruling our country. We want them to rule our country, but they're dirtbags, so we need to put some restraints. And that restraint document that restrained the power of men in power is called the U.S. Constitution. It's a document of restraint. Why can't they get anything done? Because the Constitution doesn't want one man to run everything. Checks and balances. The French Revolution is not. The French were casting off God altogether. They didn't see any accountability to God. They felt like their new enlightened understandings of humanity and law and all those things were premier. They were the top of everything. We don't need to listen to God anymore. They cast that all off. They went through all of those executions. Even the people who started the revolution in France were on the guillotines at the end of the revolution. The people who started it, they turn on themselves, they turn on each other and start killing each other. It was a horrible thing, so different from the American Revolution. Why? Because of their ideal about God. That changed everything. Changed everything. And that's what we're seeing right here. That's what's going to happen. But again, sober up. Here it says, we shall be given into his hand. The loudmouth horn. But not forever. For a time, times, and a half. And now almost every biblical scholar looks at that language, and it's an idiom in the ancient language for a thing, two things, and a half a thing. A thing and two things adds up to three things and a half. So 3.5 things. And most everyone agrees that if this indeed is talking about the narrative, the historical narrative of the end times, that we're talking 3.5 years. So that's a pretty good guess, but it's 3. It's 3.5 of some things. Interestingly enough, again, if you're a student of eschatology and time stuff, you actually sit very strongly on this idea that Daniel tells us in a couple of chapters about the seventh 7 years of the end of time. And it's actually in 7 years. And it says in another place that about half that time it'll be horrible. Well, half the time it'll be great, half the time it'll be horrible. And half of 7 is 3.5. So you can tie those together as you'd like, because I think that's probably a good correlation. Anyway, I don't want you to miss the fact that not only will this very powerful person, it seems like, prevail in the world, he'll prevail over saints, say horrible things about God's holy ones, horrible things about God himself. And he'll be allowed to prevail, but not forever, for time, times and a half. But during that time, people will die. But the court shall sit in judgment, and his dominion shall be taken away, to be consumed and destroyed to the end. Oh, yes. And the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. Woohoo! No one's excited. I'll just take some. Dorothy's excited. Yeah. Lily's excited. And that's the hopefulness of all of this. I mean, the entire story, it just seems so terrifyingly tragic. He's going to be allowed to prevail over the people that God loves. And God's going to allow that for a season, for a time, times and a half, for ways. And it looks like it'll be bad. And those of us who haven't a glimpse into the future will think, this is going on forever. How can we exist under the weight of this kind of persecution? This is horrible. Horrible. It feels like forever. No, it's a time, times and a half. It's not going to be forever. And in the end, even those who are destroyed by the talking horn during that time when he's allowed to prevail for a short amount of time, they themselves, along with everyone who's gone before them, will actually inherit the kingdom. And if you don't have that little nugget of truth in your head, then during those times of persecution, it'll look like God is unjust and he's not loving us anymore and he does not care. But he does, because you know what? We flipped to the end of the book and we read how it turns out. And not only will Jesus win, but the people that he established the kingdom for, you and I, who love him, who love his returning, it'll be established for us. I mean, Jesus said to the apostles, I'm going somewhere you can't go. They freak out. And he says, look, would I have told you of a place you're going to go if I wasn't going to take you there? That's what he says in John. You know, there's a place I'm going to establish it for you. And look, in my Father's house, there's lots of rooms. And we're making a place for you. You're not being forgotten. At the end of time, even in the midst of that kind of weight of the talking horn that is actually talking blasphemous things about God himself, when you think that he's finally winning and the world is going to hell, because it looks like it actually is, and we're being tragically prevailed upon by this one, you'll think it's the end, it's the end, it's the end. This is what God's called me to. This is a horrible life. But actually, you're on the cusp of inheriting the kingdom with all those who've gone before you. Because Jesus said, I established a place for you so that where I am, you may be also. And that's the end of the story, not the persecution in the middle. This Most High, his kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom. No one's going to overthrow it. And all dominions shall serve and obey him. And they all lived happily ever after. Yes, this time. But it's preceded by a horrible time. It's preceded by a horrible time. And here Daniel says, here's the end of the matter. Which, between you and me, I'm kind of tired. Here's the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts greatly alarmed me. My color changed. I always loved that phrase. We used that about Belshazzar when the hand was writing on the wall. His color changed. Well, that's what Daniel has seen things that you and I are not going to be allowed to see unless we live in the midst of them. But Daniel saw them ahead of time, and it just emotionally took him out. But I kept the matter in my heart. Well, I hope so. Hey, psst, you want to hear some really disturbing news? So he kept it to himself for a while. But now he writes it down, and now he puts it in a book, and it travels across the centuries, and here we are reading it. Yeah. Okay, let's wrap this up. By the way, thank you for your patience. You just went through the entire chapter 7 of Daniel about this one vision. Yeah, good for you. Oh, accomplishments. Check that off your list. I want to show you something, though. You already knew the message of this vision. You had pieces of it already in your head. You just never tied them together before. So here's the abridged overview. We just looked at it. There will be superpowers, and these superpowers will come and go. And in the time frame, our limited time frames of life that we have, we look at these superpowers and say, there is nothing more powerful than Nebuchadnezzar, right? Or you'll say, there is nothing more powerful than the United States of America. We can do anything we want to. No, superpowers come and go. And as a superpower, we will come and go. It's just the way it is. Superpowers come and go. The last superpower on the list, the very terrifying, troubling beast, is a multinational one. It's got many kings. It's got many kings that seem to be allied together. So if you want to form your theories of geopolitical existence right now, who qualifies for that, go for it. But this is the case. There will be 10 kings, not just one dominant king like Nebuchadnezzar. Many kings. It'll be multinational. It'll be brutally anti-God. Brutally anti-God. I mean, blaspheming against God himself. Brutally anti-God, and anyone who trusts in God. That is just without question, that's there. And there will indeed be a season of success for this brutally anti-God conglomeration of kingdoms. They will be allowed for a time to look like they can blaspheme God, and God is not going to take them to task. All those psalms where David writes about being persecuted by Saul before David becomes king. And he's running from Saul with all his life in this unjust persecution from the king of Israel. And David writes psalms, and in the beginning of the psalm, he pours out his heart and he says, this is not fair. This is not right. Saul should not be chasing after me. God, don't you see what's going on? God, are you sleeping? He says that. Are you missing it? Well, in the end of David's story, it turned out pretty good. But when you're in the midst of it, that's what I'm saying, when you're in the midst of it, it looks like there is no end. And you're tempted to listen to the whisperings of Satan where he says, God has forgotten all about you. Because look, the talking horn is prevailing and God is letting him. God must not love you anymore. And that's what he whispers in our ears. And this is the preventative to that whisper. Yeah, but in the end, there is a final kingdom. Judgment is going to consume them, and a final kingdom will come, and that final kingdom is the kingdom made possible by the Son of Man. Over and over, Jesus says, I'm the Son of Man. I'm the Son of Man. But I thought you said it was a human being, Son of Man. Yes. Jesus is both fully human and fully God. Wow, how can that be? Well, I don't know. But he is. He is. Fully human, fully God, Son of Man. So every time when you read the New Testament from now on and you see the Son of Man, quote unquote, referenced in the New Testament, they are pointing to Daniel 7 right here. Right here. This human being that comes from the cloud of heaven, to whom and through whom this final kingdom, the final kingdom will be established. And for who? For the saints, for those who love the Ancient of Days. Every time you see Son of Man. So make a note when you're reading the New Testament. When Son of Man comes around, ding! Go back and read Daniel 7. It's that one right there. Big deal. And this kingdom, this final kingdom will never be taken over. It's forever, and ever, will not stop. And it's given to the saints of the Most High. Now, let me defuse the saints word for a second. The saints word doesn't mean perfect people. It doesn't mean people who've attained a personally derived righteousness, and so they can actually be elevated to the point of not just being good people, but saints. No, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about people who are beloved of God, who have admitted to God and yielded to God that, yes, indeed, I am tragically flawed in my sin, and there is no way I can personally expunge that sin and make myself acceptable to a righteous only God. There is no way, and yet I've accepted God's solution to that problem. God says, I've provided a solution in the blood of Christ. And now I welcome you into the kingdom. You're mine. The saints are people. The saints are not good people. The saints are forgiven people. Now, I mentioned that you knew all this stuff before. There's a more abridged version of Revelation, and we just read an abridged version, but there's an abridged version of Revelation that now you're so attuned to recognize the end times consequences of. We'll read it and you go, wait, was that talking about the end times all along? Jesus went up on a mountain. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom that the Son of Man is establishing. This is talking about that. He's talking about Daniel. For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Go down to verse 5. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. They're the last kingdom standing. And then he goes on. I'm going to skip a few verses and actually go down to 9. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Wow. And blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you, utter all kinds of evil against you, falsely on my account. But rejoice and be glad. Why? For your reward is great in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Get used to it. These passages Jesus is telling us in the Beatitudes are all about the end of the story. And that between now and the end of the story, life may not look really pretty for many of us. Especially if this talking horn is allowed to prevail for a times and a half. It will not look pretty. He will prevail. He'll speak horrible things about the God that we've come to love. Yes, he eventually gets taken down. But Jesus is saying right here, you're blessed when you're experiencing this because it's one of the tip-offs of the fact that your reward is still coming. It's planned. God didn't forget about you. He's establishing a kingdom through his Son, which has begun with the cross. And you're invited to that. And after this horrible season of evil prevailing on the earth, God will snap his fingers and say, time's up, we're done. And justice will prevail. Evil will be put away. And the ones who have come to love his coming will be drawn in the kingdom. If I didn't prepare a place for you, why would I be talking about it, Jesus said. Because that's what we've done. Someone asks you, what's Revelation about? Say, go read the Beatitudes. Because that's what it's talking about. The end. You know, there's even a more abridged place about what's Revelation about. So next time when someone says, have you read Revelation? Well, some of it. So what's it all about? Well, it's kind of complicated, and there's things, and there's horns, and you can tell them read the Beatitudes, because actually that's getting you through the troubled time and into the end. The Beatitudes are actually that. But there's an even more abridged, and this is the one I love to use favoritely. What is the summary of Revelation? You know how sometimes in the front of books they'll put like a one-paragraph summary of what the book's about? Here it is. You ready? This is the summary of all of Revelation. Daniel 7:17. There were 4 great beasts and 4 kings who shall arise out of the earth, but the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever. There you go. That's Revelation. And it is. Those are the 2 verses that the being gave as the interpretation of what Daniel was seeing. This is it. This is it. Kingdoms will come, kingdoms will go, nasty things will happen because people with power do nasty things. They rise out of the earth. It's just horrible. But in the end, the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom, possess the kingdom forever, and ever. That's the news of Revelation. Now, we get hung up when we look at Revelation about the meaning of all the different images in it, and that's okay. In fact, it's fascinating. It's fascinating to do that. It's really fun to do that. And God wants us to explore it. He wants us to get in and look at it. It's a mystery, it's a mystery in comic book form when you read it. It's fascinating. And so I don't want to discourage you from reading Revelation. But if you need to stand back up from it and say, what's the key idea of Revelation? The key idea of Revelation is there are nasty things on earth. Jesus, the Son of Man, came and died on our behalf and established the kingdom, and we're all invited to it, and then they all lived happily ever after. That's why I put the word hope up there. Because Revelation, in the end, is extraordinarily hopeful. Now, we get kind of spun up on trying to figure out the pieces between now and then. There's nothing wrong with that. God put it there for us to be informed for lots of reasons. But don't ever lose your sense of hope for the fact that despite all the swirling evil that's described figuratively in Revelation, and that we just looked at in Daniel's vision, all that evil that swirls, which will become reality on this earth. Whether we're alive or not at the time, I don't know. But it will become a reality in this earth. It will be a place you will not want to live, especially if you believe in God. But the good news is, in the end, there's a kingdom being established which will never be overtaken. And that kingdom was established by the Son of Man for us. For us. Hope. So again, if you're in the midst of a protractedly long time of experiencing evil, of injustice, of people saying remarkably bad things about you that aren't true, I mean, all the things that go on in the world, I mean, we know about that stuff. And it seems to go on so long, and it just requires so much patience from us. And we ask God, when will this end? When will this stop? And this is unjust. God, are you seeing this? Are you writing this down anywhere? He is. He sees it. He's writing it down. And in the end, all of the actors that are part of that swirling tornado of evil, which will come to the brink for all the earth, God will take and bring justice to. It'll happen. It'll happen. And those of us who've come before, who may have even died in the midst of that, will come back to life, and he'll say, that has all been swept away, regardless of how superpower the superpowers were, that have all been swept away, because the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords has pushed them out and established a forever kingdom. And by the way, you were invited from the beginning of the universe. Enter those into the presence of God. So that's our hope. That's our hope. Don't lose the end of the story, is what we're saying right here. That's our hope. Okay. That's the 12th part of Daniel. We've been really doing some stuff. We're going to sing this last song because I really resonated with these. There's peace that outlasts darkness. Yeah. There's hope that's in the blood. There's future grace that's mine today that Jesus Christ has won. So you can face tomorrow, for tomorrow's in your hands. All I need you will provide, just like you always have. And that's a heart that yearns for this renewed life with God after all the bad stuff happens. You trust in God. You put your reliance on him. And even if everything is falling apart around you, which it will, you realize that God has never lost me and he's never forgotten me. He gives me a peace because of that knowledge that outlasts all that darkness. Don't lose vision of that. Father, we come to you thankful for these, well, they're crazy passages, but our hearts are encouraged. Our hearts are encouraged that in the end, a kingdom has been established for us, the meek, the pure in heart, that you've made pure by the blood of the cross. There's a kingdom set aside for us that will go beyond just long. It'll be forever and ever. And you've invited us to that kingdom. And you've made a way for us to be even there, despite our sin, because Christ himself has taken on himself the wrath of the justice of God because of that sin. And we are now considered, as you look at us, white as snow. All these sins that we've had have been taken away from us, dropped in the depths of that ocean, and they're just gone and irretrievable because of what Christ has done for us. You and you alone, who have invited us to the feast of this kingdom, are also the one who provide us the white clothing of righteousness through what Christ has done for us. And so when you see us at that moment, you see the righteousness of Christ. And God, there's no way we can pay back that kind of payment for us. There's no way in which we can look at ourselves and say, I always deserve to be in this kingdom because I'm pretty good, because that doesn't get us anywhere. But we've yielded and confessed and agreed with you that we are riddled with sin and that sin has been taken care of and nailed to the cross. And now the invitation to this kingdom, which is forever and ever, led and championed by the Son of Man himself, Jesus. And Father, despite all the darkness through which we go through now and in future generations, we know that there is an extraordinary promise that's coming. And just as Jesus came the first time and he promised to come a second time, that second time will indeed come. And Lord, our hearts lean forward, yearning for that day when evil will finally find justice and that the light and the nearness of God will be complete with us. So thank you for these passages. It gives us great hope now in Jesus' name. Amen.